Lords and ladies of the Duchy, welcome to episode 5 of Duke's D&D Debauchery, as we continue to follow the story of our heroes on Renkaat in the Conduit. Where we last left our heroes, they had just returned to the city of Hetham after retrieving the ring from Hetham, first king of the West, in his summer palace, and making the 3-week journey all the way back to the city of Hetham, meeting with some seekers, dodging some others, getting all of their items inventoried due to the increased watch from the city guards, as the Athenians, the Elven Empire to the east, has invaded the sovereign nation of Laurel, an exporting artificer nation composed primarily of gnomes and goblins, and basically the council has decided that in order to make sure that Athenia doesn't try and do any funny business here, we're going to have some increased security requirements. But the party makes it back into the city and trying to figure out what in the world they're going to do now that they have this ring given to them by who is still seen, at least by the charter, as the true king of the kingdom of Hetham. One of the first things that Korstag and Von Beck see as they are entering the city is there's a man in simple clothes standing atop a crate talking to a crowd of people. And as the rest of the party is going and returning their horses and moving deeper from the outer city towards the inner city, is that they're talking about the fact that the people are supposed to be represented in the government of the Kingdom of Anikia. That's why each of the 4 primary races that inhabit the kingdom have representatives. There's one for the humans, one for the Aasimar, one for the tieflings, and one for the dwarves. And these representatives, based on the charter, have an obligation to elect a king. And as soon as this individual states that basically if the councilors are not going to choose to elect a king, then the people need to force a vote of no confidence for the councilors to force special elections to get new people in there who are going to vote and establish a king. And this is in direct response to what the Athenians are doing in the east. It's, look, if the Athenians in the east are rising up and are going to potentially pose problems for us as a kingdom, then we need to have a strong, unified central leader in order to be a show of strength and respond to this. And as soon as there are city guards that are sitting there and listening to him, and as soon as the speaker basically states there needs to be a vote of no confidence, he is removed from the pedestal of that is basically these crates that are just in the outer city, and the crowd eventually disperses. This doesn't sit well with Korstag or Von Beck, and they kind of talk amongst themselves that they need to be careful about the company that they keep and the things that they say, especially in public. But that is unsettling for the both of them. One of the first places that the entirety of the party goes to is they go to Lumot Pole's shop once again. He's very happy to see them. Hello, friends, as they walk into his shop once again and descend down the living wood banister into his shop. Korstag does take this opportunity to once again go back into the back room with all the rope and line and twine, and have kind of a small conversation with Lumot, saying, "Hey, we got the ring. Hlifar told me we've got to give it to its rightful owner, but there isn't a rightful owner. Any advice? Kind of got to get some of the stuff, but just kind of want to fill you in on what's going on." And Lumot's like, okay, yeah, get what you guys need here. I'll do what I can. I still have a business to run, but you're on the right path. You're following what Hlifar is telling you to do. Keep moving forward. Just kind of as a boost of confidence to Gorstag individually. Hey, you are doing the right thing. There's also an interaction between Lumot and Milo where Milo basically changes into something and using his wild shape, since he is our resident druid, and Lumot responds by saying, oh, I can change too, and he changes from his werebear form into his human form. He's about 6'2", 6'3", well-built human individual, kind of short, well-kempt beard, short-trimmed brown hair, nondescript brown eyes kind of thing, but he just, and is in relatively fine clothes, and just kind of waves at Milo for a little bit before changing back into his werebear form. And so that kind of forms a bond between Milo and Lumot at that point. But they get they kind of get some of the things that they need with some of the extra cash that they haven't spent from what I gave them at the beginning of the campaign. And that's kind of the interaction at Lumot's. Then Doc splits off and goes back to Kettle's library, because one of the things that she told Kettle as she was leaving was that she would basically fill him in on what happened. And so she goes there and asked the individual who was the clerk that first revealed that Kettle was the king. And she goes up to him and asks if Kettle is in. Kettle is not in, very busy with the stuff that's going on with the Athenians and having to respond to that, but that he can take a message. And Dox is like, oh no, I'll find him basically when he's available, and I'll tell him in person. So she dips off from there. And then the party decides to split up. One of the things that they had been told was that Anastasia had basically, she was brother to Alexander, which was one of the closest companions to Hetham during his ascension. In fact, he's the first lord that basically joins Hetham's side during his War of Unification, and ends up marrying his sister Anastasia. And Anastasia, one of the things that they'd done for Anastasia is, as she was going blind, it was originally Alexander's idea, and Hetham basically moved money around as he could in order to establish a school for the blind, in order to teach people Braille and just have a place that they could go and still find a place in society. And that happens to be in one of the boroughs of the kingdom, Alexander's borough. And so Gorstag, Milo, and Dox decide that is where they are going to go, while Von Beck and Roderick decide they're going to go and try and figure out more about this charter and see if they can find some more information in regards to what's going on with the kingdom as a whole. So they find their way to the public library, and the librarian is like, hey, you're not going to find any of the information that you're looking for in regards to specific kind of long ago history of the kingdom in regards to when the last time there was a vote for a king, or any of the history that kind of follows along that. But if you go to the academy, which is right next door, and that's a school for primarily sorcerers but also wizards, then they're more the historians. The clerks that work in the academy are more the historians. They can help you out. So they get set up with this individual who's known as Clerk Rufo. And Clerk Rufo is kind of he explains to them, he's basically kind of the head of the history department in a sense, but he he doesn't have the information particularly that they are looking for, but he knows the individual, some of the information that they're looking for. He knows where it's at, so he leads them to this classroom where we meet Clerk Logan, who is teaching a seminar, and at the end of the seminar, basically Rufo asks if, hey, can these two individuals look over at one of your books? They're looking into a particular portion of history when it comes to the voting for kings and things of that nature. They're history buffs. They're trying to learn more about the kingdom. And one of the things that Logan looks at, he stares at Roderick and doesn't have his eyes leave as Roderick and Von Beck go over basically to the bookshelf and go and look through the books, the particular volume that Rufo had pointed them to, and and he's just staring Roderick down, because Roderick is in full plate armor in the colors of House Anikia, which is, the party doesn't necessarily realize yet, that is something that hasn't been seen in the capital for a very, very long time. But Logan obviously understands the importance of this. What Von Beck and Roderick are able to, from the history book, understand is that the last time that there was a vote for a king was in the year 521 PU, or post-unification, which is basically from when Hetham was crowned king of the Kingdom of Anikia. That is the start, that is post-unification 1, basically. And the last time that there was a vote for a king was in 521, and then there was a massive fire at the Academy in the Public Library in 522 that wiped out a whole bunch of records, very similar to the fire at the Library of Alexandria. And there hasn't been a vote for a king since, and we are currently in the year PU 687. So there's been a long time, even since there's been any of the counselors who have attempted to vote for a king, and that is now well established, 160 years of precedent for that. And this is kind of unsettling to Von Beck and Roderick as they're trying to come to grasp with this. And as they're leaving, as Rufo is kind of leading them out, he kind of pulls them to the side and very quietly tells them, look, you need to be very careful, Roderick, about the colors that you wear. They have very, very particular meaning, and you need to not trust any clerk, including myself. Be careful what you talk about going forward. And that is kind of the end of what it is that Von Beck and Roderick do during this session. As we break over to Milo, Dox, and Gorstag, it takes them a little bit of time, but eventually they find Alexander's Burrow. They find where Anastasia's School for the Blind is, and the different types of architecture. So in Alexander's Burrow, it's more Roman-style columns, typical marble, typical white marble kind of construction or whatever. But they go to this school and they meet. They go to the school. They see that the doors are open. They go in and they enter, and they meet a roughly 6 foot tall man with shoulder length blonde hair, whose eyes are a little too blue. They're this deep, almost sapphire blue, and the irises themselves almost shine like gemstones. And he introduces himself as Derek. He is basically an aide to the headmaster, and basically works and does whatever it is that the headmaster needs him to do. After this slight introduction, he's kind of off-putting about the fact that these people are here and they need to kind of figure out what's going on. They're trying to talk to who's in charge, and he's like, look, just tell me what it is that you need to do, and I can talk to the headmaster, and then we'll get back to you. You can come back tomorrow or something, right? Well, at this point, the headmaster because they're kind of in the open foyer, and the headmaster is now up a level in the banister and is like, "Oh, we have guests. Send them up, Derek." Derek is exasperated at this, but is like, "Okay, you guys can, I guess, go up and meet with the headmaster." The headmaster is this kind of, he's this really over-the-top character. He's bald, he's in fine kind of scholar's garb, but kind of acts almost impatient and is exceptionally flamboyant. And Milo immediately latches onto this individual and kind of copies all of his mannerisms and things of that nature. So Milo, the headmaster is like, quickly, as they're coming up the stairs. So Milo starts to sprint up, and as Dox and Gorstag are kind of taking their time, the headmaster is sitting there, both hands kind of behind his back, and he's just tapping one of his feet. And Milo is then there because he has run up the stairs, standing there next to him, also tapping his foot with his hands behind the back. And then as Gorstag and Dox finally ascend all the way up to the second story, the headmaster throws the doors to his office open and invites them in, and then waves his hand, and the doors behind them close. The party is trying to be very careful about the information that they tell this individual. At least Gorstag and Dox are trying to be. Milo completely spills the beans on what is going on. It's like, hey, yeah, we went to the Summer Palace, we found this ring, and now we're trying to figure out what's going on with Anastasius, because the kingdom's in dire circumstances, and we think that there's something that she had that we need. And the headmaster is very much like, "Oh, really?" and is very enthused about this prospect. The party doesn't... The Dox and Gorstag are not very trusting of this individual at first, and so in order to prove the fact that he is someone that they can trust, he kind of unbuttons his top collar and reveals just above his collarbone that he is branded. And it's a circle, and inside the circle is kind of like three writhing snakes that almost wrap around themselves to be almost like a tree of life type situation. And branding in this kingdom carries very particular meaning. So the Seekers themselves, this is some of the things that are common knowledge, that the Seekers themselves have brands that are on their wrist, that are displayed at both the top and the bottom of their wrist. And anyone who is branded in that way, it is a magical brand that is basically guided by the charter, and it binds people to very particular rules. And so this is the headmaster's way of trying to go out and kind of force, in a way, Gorstag and Dox to be like, "Look, you can trust me. There are certain things that I'm bound to. You are on a path. You are given guidance directly by the king. It is my responsibility to help you in the task that you are trying to accomplish." And so he basically earns their trust and then is ready to send them down to his basement in the school, where he says, "This is where you need to go." One of the other things that comes up with this interaction and why they wanted to go to this school is that they have those books that are Braille. And so part of the deal that's made is because the headmaster really wants them actually to go down into this basement and to do what it is that they need to do. So he's like, "Look, if you go down to this basement, you do what you need to do. I'll translate these books for you, because obviously I can read Braille." And he immediately starts translating them. He basically is using a modified version of Mage Hand, and he has as before they even leave the office, he has hands that are reading over the books, and then he has other hands that are transcribing them into Common for the rest of the party to be able to read. One of the other things that the party is kind of concerned about is the fact that Milo in particular is very curious about what the headmaster's name is. But the headmaster says, "I am the headmaster. That is my name." And it isn't until he actually reveals his mark that he says, "I don't remember what my name is." And that kind of sets it in for Milo, who was trusting of this man, then not trusting of this man, to be like, oh, that's some real stuff right there. That's that. Obviously, the fact that you have forgone your name to become the headmaster, that matters. And the party is led down to the basement, once again passing by Roderick, who's having some issues with the cleaning materials that are located in basically the broom closet. Which is the same closet that he was struggling with as they walked in. But the headmaster kind of rushes down and leads them past them and leads them to these set of doors. And these doors are like heavy wooden doors, and there's iron banding on them. And he points them down to those doors and is like, hey, these are the doors that you need to go through, but I can't follow. There are limitations to the things that I can do, which is why I think that it's very important that you guys go and do this, being, sent by the king to go forward. So that as they enter the basement of Anastasia's School for the Blind, that was actually where we ended the session. And they accomplished most of what I wanted them to do. In this session, they're kind of following the leads, although them splitting the party and doing two separate things and essentially going into this place that I tried to kind of portray as potentially dangerous with Doc's, Milo, and Gorsag's interaction with the headmaster, that this is potentially dangerous, what it is that you're doing going forward, and I can't guarantee your safety. But them being headstrong players were like, oh yeah, no, obviously we can go and just immediately deal with whatever it is that we got to deal with in here. So that was kind of an interesting situation for them to be split, and there was some discussion out of game of like, oh, good, you guys split the party and just immediately went into this place that could be dangerous. So that'll be kind of fun and stuff that happens in the next session. But other than that, accomplished all of the goals. A lot of RP stuff, a lot of lore drop. This session for me as a DM was really enjoyable because I got to really delve into this kingdom that I had kind of set up and all of the history that goes along with it. So really, really enjoyable. The players seem to definitely have a lot of fun delving into all of this and the challenges that are presented with trying to gather information in this city that not many of them are actually very familiar with. Von Beck has been a sailor most of his life, working in basically a salvage operation. Milo obviously has been a druid in the Kingswood, working with the Circle the entire time, so he's not used to being in a city and being around a lot of people, and a lot of that was kind of seen with his interaction with, like, not wanting to sleep in an inn, wanting to sleep with the animals on the way there. He was really in his element on, when they were out in the wilds on the road. Dox has been a nomad for all of her life, and a lot of it has been while she's been alone as a young girl, growing kind of into adulthood. And so she's not familiar with this city. Gorstag, being a changeling, has been on the outskirts of society in his roguish nature, so he's not entirely familiar with the city or its inner workings or the inner workings of the kingdom. The one that is the closest to understanding how the kingdom functions and operates is Roderick, because he's been a city guard for a few years at this point. He was previously in a mercenary band, and the mercenary band unfortunately died in a tragic accident, and in trying to rebuild his life, he ended up joining the city guard of this small no-name town down in the south, and that's kind of how he rebuilt his life. So he's the closest to understanding how society works, but even then, this is a massive city, and big big kind of political structures that is way out of all of the parties' kind of understanding. So they're basically just trying to tread water and do what it is that they have to do. So from a DM perspective, it was really fun to watch the players try and navigate through this mess as characters. But that ends our fifth session and kind of my DM point of view for things. I hope that you have been enjoying either watching or listening to this continuing tale of our heroes in the world of Renkaat and the Conduit, and I hope that you continue to want to watch and listen to how it is that they kind of navigate this mess that they have gotten themselves into.